My name is Fuchsia Bush. I am 34 years old and I am in Vernon, British Columbia. I am Kelowna's next drag superstar because I represent a diverse type of artistry that I don't think is necessarily seen in the Okanagan, and I'm trying to bring a really different perspective and point of view about drag and what people representing drag can look like. So what drag means to me is a way to express some of the things that I value so much as an artist and was never really able to express in conventional art forms. I've always wanted to dabble in performance art, but it was someone who has difficulty with, I have hypermobility problems, so I tend to subluxate my body parts a lot, so I never really got to do dance. And when I did, I used to hurt myself, so performing the way that I do is, I'm very limited in the capacity of how long I'll be able to do it, but being able to do what I do is so important because I don't see a lot of other people getting to do these types of things. I've struggled a lot with body dysmorphia and the way that I've looked in clothing, and being in drag has been a really fantastic way to experience and understand my body and connecting with other people in a way that I can't do when I'm out of drag. I would say no. There is such a distinct difference between who I am in drag and who I am out of drag. I'm very feminine and powerful, and I'm trying to tap into this sort of monstrosity and excess that I feel like I can't do as like a civilian, I guess I'll say. When I'm out of drag, I'm usually pretty androgynous. As a non-binary trans person, I have a really hard time trying to figure out what my gender expression and body needs to look like in everyday life because I get misgendered all the time, I feel out of place all the time, but when I'm doing drag as Fuchsia, I feel like I can express every single part within femininity that I feel like I don't have access to when I'm out of drag. And within that too, there's so much power of bending masculinity and femininity that I love doing. So I think the future of drag, we're seeing so much of it changing right now in the local community, which I'm such a big fan of. I love going to see local drag shows. I'm such a big fan of the way that drag thing has become this ever-encompassing category of drag that seems to be kind of taking kings and queens by storm and just saying like, listen, you don't have to be within the binary to be a valued member of the drag community. So that's really what I see drag kind of cycling back into. Like, this kind of what I'm doing is I'm returning to this kind of Club Ken mentality of like, I want to be weird and abstract and monstrous and strange, and I love seeing that kind of bleed into very everyday, popular, glamorized drag. So I think that's where the future is just weird. Oh my God, there are so many misconceptions about drag. Let's talk about the number one elephant in the room. No one is grooming your fucking kids. No one wants to touch your kids. I guess we can't really say that on social, but yeah, the biggest concern, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that's facing drag right now is the fact that somehow trans can be contagious, I would say, and that drag can be a gateway drug to changing your gender and your sexuality, and it's all very scary. And I think drag is just this beautiful thing that opens up possibilities to who you are as a person, and it shows you who and what type of person you can be when you're not confined and bound up by heteronormativity and heterosexuality, and a lot of that comes out when you get to just do a little bit of a bip and a bop around on stage, just doing your thing. So one of the things that I do struggle with sometimes is picking a song for any show, just because sometimes I feel like I don't have the best perspective on what it is that I want to do or say, and I really rely on my husband, Peter Packer, for that. He really helps me pick out the songs that I'm gonna do. Like, I'll have an idea and he'll be like, that's great, have you heard this song? So we fell in love with this artist at the Margaret last year, and I've done a couple of medleys by her because her songs are quite short. So he picked out the song and he was like, have you thought about doing this? And I listened to it and I was like, it feels kind of like too much, like I'm suggesting I am a god. And he was like, no, you're announcing yourself to Kelowna and you're saying, look at me, I'm powerful, and there is power in what I can do. And because the song was so short, it was 2 minutes and 45 seconds, we ended up trying to figure out how to extend it. We actually ended up picking a bit of a poem, Ozymandias by Percy by Shelley, just to talk about the So Ozymandias essentially is, I am Ozymandias, king of kings, look upon my works ye mighty in despair. And it's kind of a comment about how we can have these grand statues and pieces of memorial, or these memories buried in the sands of Egypt, and yet the pharaohs are long gone. So it was kind of the suggestion that like art is very ephemeral, and what we think of as history making and landmarks changes through time, right? So I was trying to suggest kind of that in this moment, I am Fuchsia Bush, I am the thing of things, and in 10 years, even next year, I'll be gone. But this moment right now, when I'm doing this, I am Fuchsia, and I'm going to make myself God. So yeah, some of the stigmas we've faced recently in drag for a lot of us, I think, is we've seen a lot of the resources that we've had access to in terms of venues or places to perform slowly being peeled away because people are very afraid of being associated with anything that's gender non-conforming. So that's one of the stigmas I've definitely faced. I mean, I also do, all ages shows where I don't get all dressed up in like fetish gear or kinky stuff because it's not appropriate. So obviously I'm going to tailor what I'm going to be performing to something that's more age appropriate, right? So that's something I haven't faced yet because I'm a smaller performer, but I can imagine that someday someone's going to be like, well, look at this idiot, this one wearing fetish hoods and masks, and like they should not be near our kids. I'm like, honey, I don't want to go near your kids. Like I'll do an all ages show if it gives me the money, but I'm like, oh my God. I have evolved and changed so much since I first started drag. The very first night that I did a song, I was wearing a pantyhose on my head with the eyes and mouth cut out because I didn't quite know how to make a mask like what I wear now. And I had made paper fingers like I wore for the prelims. And I had imagined that I would just, it was a one-time thing. Like I'll just wear this face mask this one time, this pantyhose this one time, and I'll wear these fingers this one time. And it fully evolved into just, that's kind of exactly what I do all the time now. And that has changed so much too. Like I make all of my own masks, I make my fingers, and every single time I make a mask, it's learning how to adapt and contour the fabric to make it fit my face, especially because some fabrics are more forgiving than others. And then in style of and ideas, like speaking more towards like aesthetics and things like that. Like I first started out doing very, trying to figure out what the line was between thing, king, and queen, and really worried about not representing things well enough. I took a burlesque dance class and I really learned how to move my body and how to accept my femininity. And the more that I have spent time as Fuchsia, the more I have let go of being worried about being female enough, male enough, or androgynous enough. So my favorite thing about being a drag thing for me is, I think, is my masks. Honestly, I love this idea for me that I always joke that my face isn't fully on until my face is on. And when I take my mask off, I just feel like I feel very vulnerable and very like, people could see me without my face on. But when I have my face on, when I'm fully kitted up and ready to go, I feel like I could do anything. I feel like I could take on the world basically, and nothing can touch me. And like drag is scary sometimes, right? But when I'm wearing my mask, I'm like, well, I don't care. Walking down the street in Kelowna, after I did my song, my tits are out, I'm like, you can't tell me anything. I got my mask on, leave me alone. Oh yeah, so for pre-show rituals, one of the most important things for me is I have to stretch. Because if I don't stretch, I'll dislocate my shoulder or my elbow, or my kneecap will pop off. So I definitely have to stretch every time before I go on stage, usually a half hour before. But then, pre-show rituals in general, it's just, we usually watch Drag Race in my house. So we watch Canada's Drag Race, or we'll watch some sort of we watch a lot of gaming VODs, watch game VODs, and we'll just kind of get our makeup on. And I say we as because my husband and I. So I will frequently, when I'm getting ready, watch something on TV and just put my makeup on in the living room because I don't have a dedicated table. So I can get my full face done in it takes me about, I would say, 45 minutes if I'm rushing to get ready, because I realistically, because I usually wear a mask, I only essentially have to paint 3 circles. But what I would prefer to take about 2 to 3 hours to get it done, because I do actually do a full face of makeup. Like I'm fully blushed. Sometimes I do contour and highlighting as well. And the only reason I really do that is because, switching faces in between numbers, I'm like, what if someone sees me without my face on? And they're like, girl, that's your makeup? And I'm like, no, I can do makeup. Trust me. Trust and believe I can do makeup. So if you have never been to a Fuchsia show before, you can expect a lot of menacing. That's what I tend to do. So it was really difficult during the preliminaries not to be menacing people in the crowd, because a big part of what I do is staring someone right in the soul and coming for them, right? So I do that a lot. So I get my fingers out and I make direct eye contact, and I'm not gonna blink, and I'm gonna lip sync into your face, and you're gonna be horrified and turned on, but horrified. So that's usually what I'm bringing, is a lot of power and intensity that you can't look away from. My drag aesthetic, Fuchsia's drag aesthetic, I should say, is very hard, feminine, very mysterious. I wear a lot of masks, and I like to think of myself as an immodest goddess, or the hottest and oddest drag thing you'll ever meet, because I'm very strange and I'm very long and limber, body by Gumby, and but I'm gonna wrap that body around you and make you look at me. So. My favorite song to perform to lately has been, I've been doing a lot of Florence and the Machine numbers. I really love Spectrum, so Say My Name. I did that last year for the Trans Non-Binary Pride show, and it's one of my favorite songs to do because I think it speaks so much to, you know, say my name, not just even Fuchsia, but like the name that I chose for myself, not my dead name. You say my name. So anything by Florence, honestly, is such a win for me. My drag aspirations so far are just to continue to like live locally. I love the Okanagan, and I would just love to continue to do drag in Vernon and Kelowna, and then expand maybe into like Thompson, Okanagan. I would love to also like go fly down to Vancouver. My sister lives in Vancouver, and go do shows in Vancouver. I don't have grand aspirations to be on any of the wonderful TV shows that we have for drag. I think I'm a little too alternative for it. Thankfully, I got the boobies and butt for it, which they love, right? But I mean, I'm 34 now, and I think I just would really love to one day be like Sophia Dick and just be like the drag grandma that everyone's like, oh my God, she's still kicking, but she's gonna be doing bingo tonight. I'm gonna go see Fuchsia Bush tonight. I chose to compete in Kelowna's Next Superstar almost on a whim. I wasn't sure if it would be a good fit for me, just because, like I said, I'm a little different. And then my husband, Peter, reminded me that Kelowna, who's also very different, won. And he was like, why don't you just try? One of the things for sure I was concerned about is putting pressure on myself, because it makes it causes flare-ups in my body to get stressed out. I haven't eaten in a couple of days so far because I've just been like, show, interview. And I've lost some sleep, and I actually had to change my costume for today because the dress didn't fit anymore. But yeah, no, so I chose to compete in Kelowna's Next Drag Superstar because I really wanted to see another person like me, someone who's a little alternative and a little weird, get on stage and do the damn thing. I would describe myself in the following 3 words. Cerebral, sexy, and mysterious. Actually, I came up with my drag name through just kind of circumstances. It was one of those things, you know, when you're just sitting around with your friends and you're like, welcome to the stage. I just remember thinking to myself, wouldn't Fuchsia be a funny name? And I think my partner at the time, looked at me and said, what if it was Fuchsia Bush? And I actually had to explain the joke to Valerie Rose recently. She was like, Fuchsia Bush, like your pubic hair. I'm like, no honey, also like a plant. There's a plant named Fuchsia. I'm like, oh baby, oh my sweet summer child. I started drag because I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see on stage. I knew that I was looking around at a lot of performers, and I was seeing them do things that I thought were amazing, but I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see. And I was like, if you don't see what you want, be the change. Do what you want to see on the stage. So my drag inspirations. I am a huge fan of Jenna Marvin. She's a queer performance artist in Russia. She does a lot of these fabulous all-white numbers. Like she wears all-white face paint and like a little bit of black paint on the bottom, and she wears these beautiful duct tape finger-long fingers, and she makes these kind of like, she constructs these fantastic shoes and boots, and she walks around in Russia just to like make a comment on the really strict laws about gender and sexuality. Another thing that I'm really inspired by for drag, I wouldn't say like I'm inspired by a ton of drag artists, but another big inspiration for me would be like Oscar Schlemmer from the Bauhaus movement, because he did the triadic ballet, which is a 3-part ballet that talked about geometric shapes and changing colors and geometric shapes and movement. So I love the idea of incorporating kind of different types of artists besides just drag artists too. But if we're talking about drag artists, like I really love Exclusive Genesis. I also really love Androgynous from, I think, the States. And if we're talking about like something like Drag Race, like I obviously really love Chastity, Charity Case. I love Charity Case from the UK as well. And Cheddar Gorgeous, oh my God. And I always get told like, do you know who Sasha Velour is? I'm like, obviously I know who Sasha Velour is. Like that's like kind of also like a no-brainer though. So my biggest competitor, oh, honestly, like a lot of them are my biggest competitor. I was joking backstage, me and Wanda looked at each other at the end of the night. I'm like, so when are we gonna break Juxtaposition's leg? We're gonna break her legs. Yeah, no, I think some of my biggest competition would be Jux and Wanda. Honestly, they're all so talented. So, but what I do is so different. So it's hard to see kind of where I would stack up. So I am Fuchsia Bush, and I am Kelowna's next drag superstar. You can catch me on June 7th for the finale of Kelowna's Next Drag Superstar. Tickets available at rebelliousunicorns.com.